We're almost at the end of Starfleet Academy Season 1, and it seems to be that it's all kicking off. So as always, I'm Al, this is the Geek in Review, and in this video I'm going to be talking about Starfleet Academy Season 1, Episode 9, so you haven't seen it, this will contain spoilers. So we do get a bit more of an action episode this week, so let's just get straight into it. And what really threw me, other than the jarring text intro that we seem to be getting this season, is that it's been a year in the cadets' lives, because this episode starts telling us that it's been their 300th day at the Academy, and yeah, this show doesn't really handle the passage of time well or explain it. I mean, they haven't really, pinpointed it with anyone's birthday or referring to a season, which in any other Star Trek show is fine because, you don't get a change of weather out in space, but this is an Earth-based format, at least for most of it. Now, is it just me that thinks that? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Vance checks in to remind us that Brackett stole weapons from that starbase a few weeks ago, and we find out one of them is called the Omega 47. And yeah, I had to Google that wasn't the name of the device in Galaxy Quest as well, so you probably weren't alone in that. Now, it is based on the Omega particle that was in one of the best episodes of Voyager. In fact, it was in the later seasons, but I think it was probably one of the best 7 and 9 episodes. But Omega 47 is a synthetic version of the Omega particle, and it just kind of makes me wonder why Starfleet and the Federation would create that. Because if you don't remember the episode, what the Omega molecule does if it's unstable is it destroys subspace and literally makes warp drive useless. So the bad guy's got the bad guy weapon to do bad guy things, but we don't exactly know what his plan is yet. Anyway, Caleb talks to Sam about his mother, but as always, we don't get any meaningful backstory about him or her. He figures out she's actually been trying to contact him for years, and he finds a stack of messages that he's left unread, which I guess isn't great news for his mum. But he does work out how to find her and doesn't really do much straight away, which I thought was pretty bizarre. Instead of asking anyone for help, he tries to steal a shuttle and decides to bring the rest of the gang, apart from Jaden and Terima, along with him. But it does get damaged during the escape from the Athena. For some reason, it doesn't really affect the plot too much, so just don't worry about it. Also, when Jaden finds out what he's done, he immediately goes and tells on Caleb as well, which I thought, wasn't a particularly great move. But obviously, they need to take the ship to go and find them, and this is what the setup was for. The planet that Caleb's mother on is also about to be overrun by Bracca's lot, the Venari Rai, who show up but don't actually do much in this episode. So of course the captain decides to go after them, but she decides to literally empty the ship, and none of the bridge crew that were in the first episode or the second episode are in this. It's literally just her, Jet, Reno and the Doctor, along with Jaden and Terima, who decide to just come along for the ride, but again, they get absolutely nothing to do. But what's really bizarre about this episode is when Caleb does find his mother on this planet, the way that they introduce and they set it up. They don't set it up, she just randomly attacks him out of nowhere, and it's so emotionally flat that this reunion doesn't really do anything or pay off, at least for me. If you did enjoy it, let me know why, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. And as always, we get no details on what she's been up to for all these years, other than some backstory with Bracca, which didn't really get too much detail at all. Given our negativity towards Federation and Starfleet, Caleb decides not to mention straight away that he's actually at the Academy with all these kids that he's brought with him, and he doesn't lie to her, but doesn't initially tell her the truth either. She manages to help them repair the shuttle because they had to give her something to do. But beyond that, this wasn't any sort of meaningful or interesting reunion in any way, shape or form. The fact that Caleb decides to go with her seemingly pisses off the rest of the gang, causing Caleb to go into a bit of a strop and telling them what he all thinks about him, which again just feels completely flat, meaningless and emotionally hollow. And it was also pretty obvious that's what he was going to do anyway, because all he's wanted to do since episode 1, despite the fact that he's never really mentioned it since, was reunite with his long lost mother. But before they go their separate ways, the rest of the cadets get caught by the bad guys, who conveniently announce that they've caught Federation spies so they can let Caleb know what his team are up to, and it forces him to leave his mother to go and save his friends. Back on the empty Athena, they realise that Braca has been depositing these Omega mines, but they can't exactly work out what he's going to do with them. Caleb manages to signal the Athena, which is now in orbit of the planet, and arrives just in time, and I've got to say that when they bring the ship down to the planet, it does actually look pretty good. But that's kind of about it in terms of action, because we don't get much else. The big chase scene where they escape the planet is only seen from the crew's point of view, and we get very little in terms of VFX, so I guess they're probably saving that for the last episode. With the ship captured, the captain orders the ship to be separated to escape, and they quickly realise that Braca's plan has been to literally wall in the Federation. So yes, in just the space of a few hours, because this doesn't happen over any longer than a day, as far as we know. Again, this show does have some issues with time, storytelling, and how those two things tie together. But yeah, he's trapped every citizen in the Federation, seemingly mining every exit in and out, which, you know, space is three-dimensional, so it doesn't really make sense, but at this point, does anyone care? But with the Athena being the only ship outside of Federation space, it's set up for them to save the day. So I guess that's what we're going to get in the finale. Now, while this maybe not was the worst episode of Starfleet Academy that we've had so far, it certainly wasn't much of an action episode because of the lack of action in it. But I think with this show by now, you need to learn to switch common sense and just get rid of it and chuck it out the window as the writers have done. With episode 9 being the end of their first year, which flew in, and the fact that Braca essentially walled off hundreds of light years in a few hours, it just feels that this show has went like the final season of Game of Thrones and they're just doing a speed run to try and tie everything up and get to the end. While it was more of a Caleb-focused episode, as always, no one else got anything to do. As I said, Jaden and Trima were basically sidelined for all of this, Genesis didn't do much as always, and everyone else was just tagging along for the ride. Which makes me think that with these issues that you're experiencing with not getting the character development in the backstory, this show might have one too many cast members. But it was an action episode without action, a sci-fi show without logic, and it all was designed to set up the season finale. And as always, the stakes couldn't be lower. As I said, it's not the worst episode, and I didn't particularly hate it compared to the last 3 or 4, but yeah, the lack of common sense in the writing here is really starting to grate on me, and I'll be honest, if it's not clear already, I'll be glad when this show wraps itself up next week. Now, speaking of which, I am going to be doing a live stream this Saturday coming, after the final episode is aired, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and you've got notifications turned on so you don't miss it, because I'd love for you guys to join me and hear what you thought about this season as well. But as always, this is just what I think. I want to know what you guys think, so let me know in the comments below, or you can reach out to me on Twitter at TheGeeksReviews. Are you glad this show's coming to an end? Have you even watched it? Do you like it? Let me know all of that and more. I usually reply to most comments unless sometimes I accidentally miss them. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts and I'd love for you to join me in the live stream. And as always, if you've made it this far, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done already. And my name's Al, thanks for watching.